Hi, everyone. My name is Shani Mohammed, and I am the Economic Development Specialist at Wilkes-Barre Connect. Welcome to episode 2 of Connect Further. Connect Further is a video series featuring national thought leaders, industry experts, social innovators, and change agents discussing the post-pandemic economic and social landscape. We hope that by having these discussions, we are able to shape our recovery efforts, define our new norm, and establish the importance of coming together as a community to solve our most pressing social and economic issues. A new installment of this series is released every other Wednesday at noon, leading all the way up to our Wilkes-Barre Connect conference in November. Today, we will be hearing from Cat Lindroth, the co-founder of Social Contract. Cat is a lifelong student of social change. She is a 2008 graduate of Yale University, where she majored in history and played Division I field hockey. As co-founder of Social Contract, Cat is passionate about transforming how communities finance social change efforts and scaling up the highest value strategies needed to drive progress on a specific social issue in a specific place. Her company partners with community, corporate, government, and philanthropic leaders to solve complex social problems. Prior to Social Contract, Cat helped to launch Teach for America Delaware. As Director of Community Impact, she founded and ran 2 collaboratives through a collective impact framework, the First Gen Network and Summer Collab, which is now a nationally recognized summer learning system serving over 2,000 low-income youth, reversing summer learning loss for a 7th straight year. Thanks so much for joining us today, Kat.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Kat, always good to connect with you and excited to get to be a part of Connect Further, our second episode. First of all, before we get into it, and we have a lot to cover today, I just want to know, how are you personally handling COVID? Or how are you getting through social distancing? What are you doing to get through the pandemic?
Well, currently I'm apparently living in the wilderness, as this is not a stock background. I've come home actually to visit my parents and be in our hometown in Farmington, Connecticut. So I am in great spirits this weekend and this week. So I'm doing well this week. Very, very happy to be home.
Excellent. Well, you look relaxed. That it does look like a fake background, but we're going to take your word for it. I saw you pan the camera, and I could hear the birds in the background. So, well, right off the bat, for our listeners and our guests, tell us, what is Social Contract?
Yeah, Social Contract is a consulting firm. We operate as a third-party intermediary that works with government and philanthropy and community, and we help those agencies work to make meaningful social change, solve complex social problems. Right now, we live in a world where there's immense social problems that are highly, highly complicated to solve. And we do not currently have at our disposal often the tools to meaningfully drive impact on the level that we need it to at this point. Systems change. And what we do is help ally those partners, get them on the same page about what the highest value strategies are that are needed to make meaningful change, and help them implement on the actions that it's going to take to make those outcomes possible.
Excellent. So I have to ask, how did you come up with the name?
Well, so Social Contract, I think a lot of people hear it and they're like, I feel like I remember that from history class at some point. So, and for me, my favorite class in college was the moral foundations of political philosophy. And I learned about the social contract then. And so it has its backing in philosophers like John Locke and Rousseau and John Rawls. And the concept of a social contract has to do with just a theory around what would the conditions need to be for someone to enter into a fair and just society, or like what is a fair and just society? What is the social contract that holds us together as one society? And what's interesting about these philosophers is they talk about, again, like what would be just, what would be fair. And so for me, why we called it social contract is in many ways an argument. The social contract that we're living in is not currently one that folks should rationally choose to jump into. John Rawls, it's worth noting this. John Rawls has this concept of the veil of ignorance, and the veil of ignorance is basically this idea that you, in order for you to rationally choose to step into society, you would run a simulation, kind of a thought simulation in your head of not knowing if you'd be rich or poor. Would you willingly step into this civilization, not knowing what station you would come into? And that would be the test, the litmus test of a just society. And I do this thought simulation now with a lot of college students, and we talk about the society that they want to live in, and we talk about the difference between that society and the one we live in. And I always ask them, knowing whether you'd be rich or poor coming into the society, would you willingly choose to enter American society at this point, not knowing whether you'd come in rich or very poor? And no one believes that's a rational choice that someone would make. And that's the challenge for this generation, for our time, is how do we restore the social contract to something? How do we rewrite the social contract to something that we all believe in, that we all believe is good for all of us?
Well, and it's going to require change, right? I mean, there's no other choice. We have to change, and I think one of the things that you love to talk about, and I've had a chance to know you for a little bit now, is we have to change how we approach change. So talk to me about that. Why is that? Why is that your principal value?
Well, let's just look at history. Let's look at how we're doing. The billions of dollars that are going into the millions and millions of nonprofits that exist, and seemingly repeating, not making marked progress, really, if we're truly honest. Individual organizations are doing great work. This commentary isn't meant to in any way suggest that nonprofits aren't working so hard and making meaningful relationships with people on the ground, and adding deep life-saving services to people. But when you look at it from a bird's eye view, many of the nonprofits that are doing that great work feel deep frustration for the system that they're a part of. Many of them will state that they're serving in many ways a band-aid for major policy issues that are causing a lot of the issues that exist in society. So they in many ways are helping people that shouldn't be in that situation in the first place if our policies were just different. Other nonprofits are, operating in silos, kind of by themselves, and they use this language, that they feel like they're at all the different nonprofits who may be funded to do or drive similar outcomes, even in one place, often are not, talking to each other or working together. You might have many nonprofits in the same school, many education nonprofits working in the same school, working with the same kids, not really meaningfully engaging each other. A lot of this comes down to the way that we finance social change. And what you often have is nonprofits that are kind of pitted against each other to prove completely unrealistic, or to make possible completely unrealistic outcomes in a completely unrealistic time frame for an unrealistic amount of money. And so they're kind of forced, like crabs in a barrel, to say, I can, to sell funders on these visions of grandeur. I can do this, and look at this data that I have that can prove it. But often that data isn't proving those outcomes, or if they are, they're mere preliminary indicators of a bigger outcome we're trying to see. It's sort of like, and go with me here, it would be as if, let's take the body as a system. It would be as though your vascular system, and let's just simplify it, your heart and a blood vessel. our current state of change management is financed through a system that would require a blood vessel and the heart to both apply to the brain on an annual basis for the resources required to actually move blood throughout the body. And they would have to pitch the brain to say why they and they alone are needing this financing to get the blood through the body. And actually taking that one step further, it would be as though blood vessel and heart had to ask all the different parts of the brain who weren't speaking to each other to finance them at individual levels, of none of which actually reached the amount of resources that they needed to do the thing that they needed to do to make the blood go through the body. And then as the hands inevitably start to lose feeling, and it would be as though the brain said, aha, I shouldn't fund a blood vessel because the data is not showing that the blood vessel is doing a good job. So then the hand falls off because they don't fund it anymore. I mean, it's a funny analogy, but it really is, in truth, what we're dealing with at a community level in terms of the relationship between the funding sector and those who are actually doing the work is a charade of nonprofits saying that they're able to do these outsized outcomes because they're fearful of their own survival. Funders only wanting to finance the new and the innovative work and on an annual basis, and not thinking that their role is to prop up infrastructure that's meant to save lives or support communities in a sustainable way. And ultimately government and philanthropy not working together on understanding what they would need to finance to support that work in a meaningful way. So when I say we need to change the way that we approach change, I mean we need to change the relationship, the financial relationship between community, nonprofits, government, and philanthropy. And we need to be getting on the same page in communities about what our priorities are. What are the problems that we need to solve most? What are the ailments that are truly holding back our community from thriving? Let's get clear on what those are. Is it gun violence? Is it workforce development? Is it your education system? Is it all of the above? But get clear on what they are, and then get clear on what the highest value strategies are that are known to move the needle on those issues. And then get clear on who's already doing that work in communities well, and then find out what their needs are. And instead of pitting them against each other on an annual basis, figure out what their needs are over the course of a decade and how we can arrive at streamlining their efforts and supporting or catalyzing their efforts. Because I promise you, if we can do that, we can save money in the long run, because we will actually, instead of just, trying something, fighting the good fight, and seeing our efforts go here and drop off, what we will be able to do is build steadily, one foot in front of the other, towards the outcomes that we're trying to see.
Well, we've talked about that approach, you and I, and some of the work that you've done at Social Contract is absolutely incredible, even before Social Contract. For our listeners and people attending today, check it out, socialcontract.org, see some of the work that Cat and the team have done. But how has COVID impacted that approach at all? The way you're approaching change? What has this done the last few months to what you and Social Contract approach? What's next?
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing is that COVID has, and people have been saying this, right, has exacerbated inequities that we have seen in society. And I think what we are seeing is a potential readiness of institutions to rethink how, or pressure rather, on institutions to rethink how they operate. I think that problem I discussed about the nonprofit sector and how you have lots of crabs in a barrel that are working really hard for not enough resources. Well, that problem is about to get exacerbated a lot, because now there's going to be fewer resources. And if you aren't serving like the basic human needs and immediate needs that are responsive in that month that, of focus for the funders, you're irrelevant, and they do not care about, keeping your operating budget alive. So what we're seeing is these exacerbation of the issue that we exist to support. And I will tell you, success in recovery for a community is really going to have to achieve or focus on, three major areas. If you're in a position of leadership, you're going to need to, as I said, deal with this nonprofit crisis. You are going to have to thoughtfully put a process in motion that is going to, help identify what are the issues we're trying to solve, what are the nonprofits that are best positioned to do it, and those who aren't in that space, who needs to dissolve or consolidate or merge, and how do we incentivize the conditions where that's not destructive experience, but a very productive one. So how do we manage this huge crisis that is just beginning to take root in the nonprofit sector? So that's one. Two, rethinking and rewiring our public institutions. So school, of course, is something that has come under quite a bit of fire here. We've seen the grotesque inequities between high income and low income kids, where private schools didn't miss a beat, but low income kids maybe have a worksheet that they're doing in 30 minutes of work. And it's, we've added enormous pressure to families to have to kind of fill in the gaps there. It's completely unacceptable. Not to mention, this shift to virtual has also just illustrated a set of questions around, like, what is school for? Why am I walking into that building every day? And is being in that building the best potential vantage point for me to learn and discover? So when we're allowed to go back into school buildings, is that the best place and positioning for my learning? So there's just so many questions that people are free now to be thinking about as they think about their public institutions. And what we would recommend is processes that bring together thought leaders in different communities and community members in those communities to really be thoughtful, to think about their North Star and what their values are, and to think about what a redesign of some of these institutions could look like. So that's going to be really needed emotionally, intellectually, structurally for communities. And many communities don't have a process to do that. So I'm seeing that need. And then third, as I said before, now more than ever, that issue of our approach is a problem. Government, I'm observing in most communities, government and philanthropy are basically trying to solve this issue in their own lane. So I'm seeing a government response and I'm seeing a philanthropic response. And in many cases, actually, this is kind of quite a tragedy, a lot of philanthropy have geared up to spend money on things that government actually already had contracts to spend money on. So because there's been no kind of coordination between government and philanthropy, you're seeing kind of a suboptimality in the way that we're financing, again, very needed resources right now. And then as we start to move into the recovery, we're going to have to band together and get clear on what does recovery in Seattle, recovery in Hartford, recovery in Wilmington, recovery in San Francisco, what do we want that recovery to mean for our community? What are the highest priorities that we need to hit? How do we band together to identify what the highest value strategies are? How do we get consensus on this? How do we understand who should be doing that work, what it costs, and ultimately make sure that funders work together to finance that with fidelity, and stop relying on the nonprofits to spend both 45% of their time fundraising on annual cyclical bases in silos, and instead free them up to do the work. be committed. Like, let's get this out of the way on the front end to understand what we need to be financing. And then funders can do the hard work of being committed to that financing and finding that financing on behalf of the strategies, as opposed to putting on the nonprofits both the burden of doing extraordinary work, iterating on the go, being paid not enough for what it is that they're doing in the first place, and collaborating thoughtfully, syncing up evaluation systems. I mean, it's just too much to be putting on an already burdened and now suffocating nonprofit system. We're going to have to find a new way forward, and facilitated processes that create alignment and insight into highest value strategies and cost related and who should do the work. That's going to be what's most needed. And that's what we're built to do.
Well, yeah. And I really, I want to touch on the community side in a second. I'm definitely going to put a pin in that because I think there's a couple of things that we want to hit in there, but I want to come back right in the beginning. You talked about, a statement that you and I always go back and forth on, that COVID hasn't created these problems. It's just really highlighted them. It's showing the deficiencies we have in multiple institutions. But I want to go back to one in particular, because I know personally, again, some of the amazing work that you've done in the education space. So I want to, let's take it right on. Let's talk about education. Whether you talk about you have to rewire that institution, or how you love to say, don't rebuild the cage, right? It's about how we're going to approach, redefining the future of this institution. So talk to me about education. How in your vision, how do we approach rewiring education, whether it's K through 12 and also higher ed?
Oh, that's a big one. In my vision, how do we, those are two separate questions. Where do I think education should go, and how do I think we should be approaching that in communities? Let me start with approach. I think that we need to be opening up dialogue between community and nonprofit providers and government legislators about the future of the school system and school leadership. I think across the board, everyone is in agreement that though there's great work being done, and largely on the shoulders of outsized Herculean efforts by, teachers and, just diamond in the rough administrators who just kick butt. But many of those people, actually, I fear, are the ones who I see leave the system because they're so burned out, because they see the system that they're working in can't enable the results that they really want to see for their kids, the experience that they want to see for their kids. And they end up feeling like they are battling the system to protect their kids, their students, rather than, working on behalf of the system to support their kids. So there's broad consensus, I think, at this point, that the education system is fundamentally broken and built to do something that is not meaningful in the modern world. I mean, someone brought up this beautiful point once where, like, you could walk into nearly any other institution and you like in 1950 and 2020 and see just like two totally different institutional feels, looks, the way that space functions, the way that rooms look like. But in the school system, you could walk into a school building in 1950 or in 2020 in the public school system, and those buildings look very similar. In many cases, they're the same building, but the it's really something that has been, I think, distressing to millions of people who do not understand how we can get out of this situation, because you have kind of this issue where the people who are in control of decision making are, in many cases, boards, many cases either detached from the experience of the kids in their under their care, and also not exactly experts in the field of education. You also see, if you follow the money, the money situation, which is something that can change from policy change, but like there's enormous differentiation between what middle and high income areas are able to work with and what lower income areas are able to work with, and that's not right either. So you're looking at like a financial issue, a management issue, and it's like, how do you get out of this? And that's where I said, like, I think that there has to be real commitment first asserted by if this is going to be a top-down effort. There could be a bottom-up effort, and that could be interesting too. If it's top-down, it needs to look like, government, showing a marked interest in, we really want to take a look at reforming and transforming our education system into something modern, and that's something that serves kids, and we want to allow a process, an unprecedented process that enables us to do that. And what I think they would need to do is really engage with different neighborhoods and different providers and really understand the different systems that could, and I say that plural, the different systems that work for different kids and different families. And then they would need to understand who should be the leaders of developing and offering those various systems to kids, and do the work of then pricing that out and supporting the implementation of these diverse systems. The reason I say plural is, like, we've got to get out of this reality that like every kid should be going through the same experience. First of all, that's just fundamentally false anyway. Like, I was successful. I can tell you that, like, if you look at me and every kid in my classroom, I don't think it mattered to my future whether or not I was like, I happened to be on pace with them, or it just learning kind of finds its own germination. It's like the seeds can hit and then they can come later. What really promotes that germination is when you have the intersection between student interest, adults where there's a relationship, real authentic relationship, small class sizes, and that you're facilitating learning experiences that have meaning and make meaning for children in the world. And we have to find a way to get there. And that kind of system, like within that, some kids may need more support and structure, other kids may need more freedom, some kids may need more visual or an artistic representation, others may need more athletic experiences and kinesthetic experiences. Kids are really different. So we have to enable different systems that really meet kids where they are. But first and foremost, really set children up to be around small groups of people who share their passions, and fundamentally kind of respect their own personal interests. So sorry, you definitely got me talking about something I care very much about. And well, yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, you're super passionate, and I think what I would love to kind of segue that in, and I think to your point, I want to add, I'm reading this great book right now, and in it, there's a segment on Lin-Manuel Miranda, and saying that he was not even close to being the smartest kid in his class. He was way down at the bottom. And he realized that what he was good at and what he was meant to be, what his passion was in life, and he followed it. And when he was asked, well, do you think your classmates, why didn't your classmates, do, or how are they weren't as successful as you are right now? He said, because I beat them to it. I realized at that age that I couldn't be on their level, but I knew I was good at something, and I found that. And I think sometimes that's where education system really kind of struggles to find that.
Struggles. The education system deters it. Like it absolutely creates fear and havoc. I mean, it's almost like if you have a deeply creative and talented person, that's that their ability to see that thrive and germinate and is in spite of the education system. We're not tapping into what we know to be true about about our humanity. And that's where, like, if you ask me, I mean, you did ask me, you asked me about approach, but the other thing is like what it should look like, for whatever reason. And I think maybe it has had to do with our just like obsession with control and certainty. For whatever reason, you know, we have thrown away an understanding of our humanity, and we have not allowed our education system to meaningfully help kids understand their interpersonal world or see their value. I mean, I talk to more middle school kids and high school kids these days who tell me in so many words that they hate themselves. I mean, they learn to hate themselves in the current school system instead of seeing the beauty in each person, how we can connect together in more meaningful ways, how to regulate my emotions, how to better understand the feelings I'm feeling, my superpowers, what I'm meant to do on this planet, moving with me in the direction of my interests. We are obsessed with this almost Puritan, punitive, compliance-based reality where it's like you need to fall in line and jump here, and without that you don't deserve success. You need to have sacrificed of yourself in order to deserve the success, and that is not true. To your point, like, that is not true. It is not whole. It is not healthy. You know, like, why are you forcing this? Instead, we should be going with the beauty and the energy of people, and serving and listening and loving, and letting them love what they love, as opposed to the other way around. So.
And I think too, no, I look, I grew up in a house where my mom was a public school teacher, and saw that, you know, the problems that she encountered at school, she didn't leave there. She took home with her. And I love seeing that. And our organization, Wilkes-Barre Connect and the Wilkes-Barre Chamber, we work really closely with Leadership Wilkes-Barre, and Jess Cronauer and Lori Nacito and the team over there. And one of the systems they have is their Impact Leadership Group. And it's teachers from our region that come together in this leadership year-round component. And I get a chance, I'm fortunate enough to at least present at least once during the school year to them. And I love it because they are these passionate teachers who are like up until 2 a.m, like creating stuff and just, you know, bringing that energy to some of these students who need it the most. And so I think in my heart of hearts, I think the pieces are there. It's just how you rebuild it. And as we talk about, don't rebuild that same institution. I think there has to be a new vision for it. But I think at the end of the day, the key ingredient to all of it, when you talk about all the voices that you need in that room to how we rewire and how we rebuild, it's the students, it's the youth. We've discovered, you know, our kind of superpower is the kids that and the students we work with on a daily basis. They are incredible. They're the most talented group of students I've seen in a long time coming through our region. And for us, we're trying to provide them that platform to really take that. And I think if we're rebuilding the education system, I think it begins with understanding the youth and understanding this generation. I think you do an incredible job of that. I know there's one thing you're working on now as we wind down here. I want you to make a plug for, because I absolutely love it, what you're doing to engage youth across the country right now.
Mm-hmm. You always like say so many things I want to respond to, and then you like ask me a question. So I am going to say something about this cage, or rebuilding the world. Like, our biggest threat right now, like, we've been offered an opportunity with COVID. And obviously there's like immense pain and immense duress going on, but in that is a forced opportunity to change things that people have been desperate to transform, that have been causing pain and torture and awful, like just terrible circumstances for over a long time. So we have this opportunity to show up to this moment and really rebuild and build into a future that we all believe in, that we actually believe in, that we're actually proud of, that we would want to live in, the social contract we would actually sign up for. And if we are to really do that, we need to understand how broken we have been and become through the institutions that exist today. You know, we have been institutionalized and we have been conditioned with certain biases and a certain way of looking at the world, and a very hierarchical power, kind of individualistic set of notions about how we should live in the world, perceive success, operate. And we need to examine the ways in which that has affected each of us in deep and profound ways. And we cannot just go and build and say, oh, I have some awesome idea, like let me just change this, or let me just transform the education system, and I'll just work really hard at it and I'll just make it happen through sheer energy. That is not going to be the tools of the new world and being able to bring about the new world if we do not engage first in like softening and listening and vulnerability and coming together as a community to assess the, you know, what's happened to us and what's happened to date. We cannot look to a new way and to build a new future. We just can't. So to that, your question for me was to plug Fireside, which is really about that, you know. And the Fireside movement is about bringing youth together, ages 16 to 26, who are being obviously profoundly affected, right? Their graduations have been canceled. You know, their life is so uncertain. You know, what they thought was going to happen when they were graduating from college is now suddenly awry. Their thought about graduating from high school, is it a good value proposition for me to spend $200K on college, right? The pressure of this uncertainty is going to be highly felt by this generation of 16 to 26-year-olds. And what we're doing is engaging them in a conversation about the future and about what they want to see the world look like in 5, 10, 15 years, and what is the world they want to believe in, and having them see that what they choose to do in the next 18 months could change, can alter what our world looks like in 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And so, you know, what Fireside is doing is bringing folks together from all over the world to have those conversations. And they're kind of bringing them into this thing called the Changemakers Institute. So they go from Fireside, where they have this deep, beautiful reflection process and awareness of their conditioning and the institutions that they've been in. And then they start to unearth their unreasonable, like, what would I do in this world if I were truly unreasonable? And then they can start to be in community with each other around unreasonables that are shared. So if I'm here, if I'm in Hong Kong, or if I'm, you know, in San Francisco, and I too want to completely transform the education system, we're going to be in community together in looking at how do we want to solve that? What is our blueprint for change? Building upon, of course, what's been done before. So that's Fireside. It's been super powerful. And I will say, when I first conceived of it, and actually I should say it wasn't just like, there's a Zach Jones from Dual School had actually come up with the name Fireside Chats, which is kind of paying homage to FDR, how they use technology to kind of bring forth a new era in society. He had also thought about the Fireside. It's what evokes it. So we came together to build this thing. And we originally were thinking about it in this type A way. Like, let's just get people, like these, you know, amazing young people, to come together and rethink the future, and let's act on it. And then when I brought in this extraordinary healer of mine, like amazing healer, like worked with Mother Teresa healer, she told me this. She was like, Catherine, like, if you don't heal what's been broken in these young people, if they can't heal in what's been in themselves, and they don't grieve what's happened to them, they will be destined to rebuild. They will rebuild what's already here again and again and again, every time. And so it changed everything. And so now the whole feeling, I'm watching kids who came in being like, hi, my name is Catherine and I run social contract, which is how they've been conditioned, to now, like, they're taking up space and they're feeling their feelings and they're valuing self-care and they're grieving, what happened to them, so I think it's a powerful healing process, and it's a powerful movement for young people to come together and truly live in the world that they want to believe is possible.
Finally, Kat, as we wind down, as you know, we have an upcoming Wilkes-Barre Connect conference in November, which we're very excited about. Got a chance to talk to you about it for a couple months now and trying to figure out the best way to involve the great Cat Lindroth and Social Contract, but really excited to work with you. And as you know, this Connect Further series, as we continue to interview thought leaders and social innovators and just change agents, that we want to find a way to really tie this into our conference. And it's a perfect way by asking our guests on each episode of Connect Further to issue us a challenge. Because in our upcoming conference in November, the focus is just not a traditional conference, whether it's in person or virtual. The conference is going to be about really rallying, coming together as attendees to help build frameworks of solutions for challenges that have been issued to us, whether it's social or economic issues. And so with that, what we love to do in Connect Further is we like to issue a challenge to our guests for them to issue us a challenge. So with that, Kat, we want you to issue Wilkes-Barre Connect Conference a challenge that we should feature in November.
Yeah. No, I love this. And it's in all honesty, like, I think the challenge that I would have for you has a lot more to do with how you approach the conference itself. I feel like so often folks attend conferences and we don't really understand the depth of who's around, who's in the room, the stories of people, and really appreciate the power and the abilities and the tools that each individual is bringing to the table to unlock solutions. So we just kind of moved right into the doing and the planning and the ideas, and not into the humans and the who's there and the being. So, I think my challenge to you would be to facilitate and foster experiences, real ones, not just like tell one thing about yourself, but really authentic, like really take your time to let each individual be seen, human connection, foster it, really enable that, like take that time for people to really connect. Because we seem to keep missing that point in this work towards building change work. So yeah, that would be my challenge to you.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I think it is something I know, especially in our field, economic development, sometimes it gets overlooked. It's all about by the numbers and the product at the end and the impact, and you forget about that human element. So I love it. I think it just embodies who you are as a person and what Social Contract is about. So with that, challenge accepted. We look forward to being planning the conference together with you and Social Contract in
Happy to help.
In November. So with that, once again, the amazing Cat Lindroth, co-founder of Social Contract. You can find them on socialcontract.org. I suggest you go today and see some of the amazing work that they're doing. Cat, always a good time to catch up with you.
No, you too. Thank you so much. This has been really fun.
Awesome.
And good luck planning that conference.
Thank you, and go enjoy that backyard now.
I will. All right, have a great one.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Kat, for taking the time to sit with us and share your thoughts. For those of you tuning in, if you'd like to stay in touch with Kat and continue learning about the great work that she's doing at Social Contract, you can visit socialcontract.org. Also, be sure to tune in on June 10th at noon to hear us talk with keynote speaker, author, and podcaster Josh Miles. If you'd like to get notifications for upcoming Connect Further videos, watch our past episodes, or learn more about the Wilkes-Barre Connect Conference, visit wbconnectconference.com. Thanks for watching.